Hey Weirdos, Rachel here. Just wanted to let you know that the episode you are about to listen to, or watch if you're on YouTube, is the live show we hosted at Caveat in New York City in August 2023. It was so much fun, and we're really excited to get to share at least a little bit of that magic with those of you who didn't get to catch the live stream or hang out with us in person. Jess and I are hard at work making sure that Weirdest Things stays alive for 2024, but for now, we do know that we're going to be taking at least a few weeks off to reset, recharge, and get back to making some awesome weird stuff for y'all. If you want to keep up with us in the meantime and find out exactly when Weirdest Thing is coming back, you can follow Jess on Twitch and you can follow me on Substack and or Patreon. That's where you can get all the latest updates on Weirdest Thing, plus other stuff that Jess and I are up to. Have a great holiday season, a happy new year, and we will see you in 2024. Enjoy the show. Hello, I am Rachel Feltman, the host of The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week. Welcome to The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week live for the first time in a long time. Thank you so much for coming. Before we get started, I need to bring on my co-hosts. It's a real throwback. We have some fan favorites with us tonight from our OG Weirdest Thing days. First, our illustrious producer, Jess Bodie, who listens to my math sound so you don't have to. Also, a Twitch star.
Does it matter where I sit?
No.
Okay, great.
Next up, we have, she asked to be introduced as the Lockbook Queen and then said, no, never mind, but I did it anyway. It's Sara Chodosh. You can't give me that and then take it away from me. And last but not least, she runs, she writes, she's amazing. She's Claire Moldarelli. So first up, I have to ask, is anyone here a fan of the podcast, The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week? Wonderful. Is anyone not a fan of the podcast? Has anyone been dragged here? Do you know where you are? Do you need help? Blink twice. Well, nah, actually, you're stuck here. Sorry, I'm not going to do anything about that. Thank you so much for joining. Also, another question. How many folks have been to live shows with us before? Thanks, Amy. Well, I'm so happy that so many of you are joining us for the first time, and for our folks at home everywhere in the world, thank you for joining us over live stream. We are so psyched to be back. Our last live show of any kind was 2 years ago, which is wild, and that was hybrid. You know, we dragged some friends here to be in the audience so we felt less alone, but we still didn't get to hang out with most of y'all. So we've really missed you, and we're really excited to be back. So let's get into it. On The Weirdest Thing I Learned This Week, we start by each offering up a little tease about some kind of fact or story we found in the course of reading, writing, reporting, etc., and decide which one we just absolutely have to hear more about first. Then, once we've all had time to spin our little science yarns, we reconvene and decide what the weirdest thing we learned this week actually was, or whatever. Sara, what's your tease?
I'm going to be talking about how trees are not a thing.
Great.
Not a real thing.
Like birds. Fake.
Trees?
Sara's going to talk about how trees are not a thing. So, someone is trying to silence you.
Yeah.
And this is a truth.
Trees.
Yeah. Big tree. Claire, what's your tease?
Yes, can you hear me?
No.
Okay.
It's cool. Yeah.
You go.
Oh, okay. My tease is that I'm going to talk about the history of one of the most classic magic tricks and how it is like steeped in misogyny and also is fantastic.
I love that.
Yeah.
Classic weirdest thing tropes in there.
Yep. And Jess, what's your tease?
My tease is I'm going to talk about telling fortunes using cheese.
Oh, another classic weirdest thing yarn.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
How we doing over there?
Yeah, can we?
Oh, can you hear me?
No.
Well, you can hear me.
Well, yeah, I
now
can hear
think
you.
I think maybe now.
Now. Hello. Oh.
Oh!
Yay.
Maybe I just don't know how microphones work. Okay.
No, I think it was off.
I'm
but-
just really close now.
So Claire, what's your tease?
Yes, I would like to talk about the connection between sunscreen, the U.S. Army, and life rafts.
Oh.
Well,
Yes.
Speaking of life rafts, I was just texting with Sarah recently because there's now a reality show based on the sex raft experiment. But
which
it's
was
really
a previous live show fact.
Yeah. But I was really disappointed. I went from being so excited, like literally screaming, to being very disappointed with where they went with it. Obviously, Sarah should have been hired as a consultant, and they really missed the boat. But anyway, we're just like we're thought leaders here. So anyone looking for unscripted TV ideas, don't get them here. We're not scabs, but later. So let's start with totally spontaneously me. Okay, so when you think of magic, the first thing you think of is probably the discovery of witchcraft, wherein the lewd dealing of witches and witchmongers is notably detected. The nari of conjurers, I can't keep reading that. It's really old-timey. But this 1584 classic is a 16-book series. And no, just me? This is not what everyone thinks of when they think of the history of magic? Okay, well, Reginald Scott wrote this book, which almost shares the title with like an extremely horny book and TV show, like so horny that I tried to watch it as background TV during work because that's like the level of quality it is, but then I had to like stop that because it was like too horny to watch during work. But anyway, he wrote it in the 16th century because he was like, the church is literally running around accusing rebellious old ladies and annoying little kids of witchcraft, and it needs to stop. So as part of his treatise against like the idea of pointy-hatted witches, he also spent part of the book being like, I'm going to explain how street performers and charlatans use illusions and make it seem like they have powers. And this is largely considered the oldest known written guide to stage magic. Sorry, illusions. But seriously, other than this man right here, when you think of magic, you probably think of like some very key signature stage acts. You probably think of like rabbits coming out of hats or like card tricks. You probably also picture a lady getting sawed in half. I like this one because she looks really over it.
Yeah, she's like, I'm done.
Yeah, she's like, I can't even. The act of sawing a lady in half it just really got people going and always has. In 1956, which was more than 30 years after the trick initially debuted, it held enough mystery and appeal that when PC Sorkar buzzsawed his wife on live TV and then went over time, very relatable, and they cut him off, people called the BBC for days being like, did we watch that man kill his wife? Is that why he went away? No, she was fine. They just went over time. Side note, Sorkar should definitely be remembered for more than just his poor timing on the BBC, like his absolutely killer eye for set design.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I want to see this show. But anyway, like I said before, the trick is actually more than a century old. It was first performed by Percy Thomas Tibbles, who wisely pulled
Wait, is that his real name?
Yes. Yeah. No, that is not what he chose to perform with. Percy Thomas Tibbles. He pulled a real Voldemort thing and flipped his name around to go by P.T. Selbit instead, because he realized he wasn't going to make it as a Tibbles.
Oh boy.
And on January 17th, 1921, at London's Finsbury Park Empire Theatre, he did the thing. He sawed a lady in half, and that was the first time. A lot of historians now say that Tibbles and his contemporaries were getting gorier and more daring in the wake of World War I because people just weren't into genteel stage acts anymore. They needed more shock value. He's said to have played up his run at the Empire by having stagehands dump buckets of fake blood out into the gutters between shows, to imply that was the cleanup necessary between acts.
He's so theatrical.
Yeah, he also hired ambulances to go around town advertising his shows, which what did the ambulances not have other things to do? Anyway, sawing the lady in half is not actually necessarily the most dangerous trick. You might be surprised that there haven't been like notable accidents. A lot of times when magic tricks go wrong, it's because there's an escape involved and like the thing you're escaping from is actually dangerous, or something like sword swallowing where like you're just like a hiccup away from death at any moment. But that isn't to say that there's no danger involved. And you know who it's not dangerous for is Mr. Tibbles over there. So I'm going to get back into that in a minute.
Sorry, I can't. Oh my God. Okay. I can't get over how much Mr. Tibble sounds like a cat.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There was one of I can't remember if it was, I think it was a Mel.com article, RIP, that was talking about this trick, and they said he went for a decidedly less cat-like name.
All I'm hearing over and
Selbit.
over is cat magician does insane things, yeah.
So, this trick quickly caught on around the world, and Selbit Nee Tibbles designed more to keep himself looking fresh, because basically it got away from him. He suddenly couldn't insist that nobody else cut women in half, so he needed more stuff to set himself apart. Subsequent tricks performed by Selbit included stretching a lady,
Her face.
crushing a woman. There would be a woman in there. I know the connection between all of these tricks might be hard to spot, so I made a diagram to help. The thing is, Selbit actually intended for his lady sawing trick to be like even more overtly anti-lady, if you can believe it. He originally wanted his lovely assistant to be this lovely lady, Christabel Pankhurst. She was a baddie, a hottie, absolutely not down to be sawn in half, as it turned out. Pankhurst was a well-known English suffragette, and if you're not aware, English suffragettes like threw hands. They were very intense, very violent. And she'd actually been a fugitive on the lam for a bit from the law, and inspired this toy called the Elusive Christabel. Okay, so it was one of those things where you like move it to change the picture, and it says, "They seek her here, they seek her there, detectives prowling everywhere, their heads with big important swell. She's gone, elusive Christabel." So this woman was iconic. Truly iconic. And she placed an ad asking for well-paying non-political work. I guess she did not get a good licensing deal on this toy. And Selbit pitched her the idea of being sawn in half, and then he obviously told a bunch of newspapers that he had asked her, and she politely but firmly declined. So drama scholar Naomi Paxton has pointed out like another layer of the obvious appeal here, in that the performance of sawing a lady in half looks a lot like this contemporary image showing journalist Juna Barnes being voluntarily subjected to forced feeding. So many imprisoned suffragettes were on hunger strikes and were forcibly fed, and Juna Barnes volunteered to see what it was like, to report, yeah, it's fucking awful. And this like very ghoulish image of these women who were often portrayed as like mannish and obscene, being physically overpowered, seemed to hold a lot of popular appeal. This picture circulated a lot. And so it's really not much of a stretch, especially considering that Tibbles really wanted Christabel to start this act with him, to say that like they were going for something specifically about crushing ladies who wanted the vote, sawing them, stretching them, etc. And back to sawing ladies specifically, the way these tricks work actually makes the like kind of feminism tie-in that much more fascinating. Because
I was hoping you were going to tell us how they worked.
Yeah, magicians hate her. She has all the secrets. I am only sharing things that are very much already online, but there are probably magicians who still want to punch me in the face for this, but that's okay. I think I can take almost any magician. I'm going to say that right now.
You're starting a feud right now.
I am. I said almost any. Listen. So I'm going to show you a few diagrams. Here we go. So this is one of the classic methods for sawing a woman in half, where you have this extra wide kind of chamber under the real table. And so the lady's got to like contort herself and slide down into the undercarriage of the table so that when they saw, she is not sawed. But that's like tough, you know? And you know what's also tough is doing this. This is from Wikipedia, and I really appreciate, actually, I didn't notice this at first, but I appreciate that they clarified that those first two would be bad if you see the little X's on her eyes. But that third one, she's A-okay. So this is another way of doing the trick where there are fake feet. They're often motorized, always wearing shoes, because otherwise people would be able to tell they're fake feet. And so a lot of times they'll play with the fact that, like, if they start with a covered box and then they take the cover off, that feels like they're making the trick harder. When really, if they like start with a covered box and then take the top off, or vice versa, they can be pulling a switcheroo where suddenly, like, what you thought were her feet are now robot feet. And
do the robot feet like wiggle? Like
yeah,
they're getting,
they do.
Like they're in pain.
Yeah, the piggies wiggle, and
God.
so this one like doesn't look. I mean, it's.
What's happening with the feet in C?
Well, because they're fake.
Because they're
feet.
fake
I think
feet, but
yeah,
why
that's
do they look like
clarifying.
Frankenstein feet?
That's clarifying that they're fake,
Oh my God.
so that you understand.
I find
There's
that much
tiny
more
details.
upsetting, Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, the great artiste who put this on Wikimedia comments for us. Look at this.
Oh!
This is insane. This is how, like, as these tricks get more complicated, now they often involve multiple people, because you literally have someone hidden in there, like, contorted up so that the person who's being cut in half can pull themselves into a little ball, and there's still somebody on the other side with their feet out. And it's just wild and requires so much skill. And the thing is that if a lovely assistant climbs into some kind of box, like, these are very common old mechanisms. That's why there are diagrams of them on the internet. But, like, even today, if a lovely assistant climbs into some kind of apparatus, it's a safe bet that she's doing something incredible in there with her body,
Right.
while the guy with top billing makes, like, magic faces at you. And there's a great documentary about this called Women in Boxes that gets into the whole, like, who's doing the real trick, the assistant or the magician. And it's really fascinating. As somebody who grew up watching, like, ABC Family magic specials and being very obsessed with them, I definitely felt like a real pang for all of the, like, lovely assistants I had completely ignored in favor of, you know, some dude. But there are magicians, like Chris Angel is very big on, like, I do my own tricks. And he specifically will say, like, it's because he thinks it's messed up that people who get top billing are the ones not actually doing the hard work a lot of the time. And it really just comes down to the fact that the lovely assistants are often the real magicians. And it all started with Tibbles. So
Tibbles.
thank you for that, Mr. Tibbles. That's my fact.
Okay. Okay. I was apparently the only one who went old school with my note cards, so pardon me. Trees. What are they?
I don't know.
Ideas? Anyone? What is a tree? If you had to.
It has a trunk.
It's
That's good.
And
taller than a shrub.
That's interesting. We're gonna get into that. Yeah. Okay.
I'm gonna unpack
Leaves. Okay. These are good. These are
It's a
good.
plant.
But not in the winter.
Some do. Some do.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So you know, there's no single scientific answers. There's no right answer. But like a central trunk, I think we see features pretty strongly here. Sorry, there's a screen behind you that I'm gesturing at confusingly.
That's so nice over there.
You know, leaves, wood is in there. So like redwood, oak, I think we can all agree these are trees. Banana, maybe it's a little less tree-like, but I think we can see a strong trunk here. I think we see leaves, the bananas. I really wish this had a laser pointer. Oh, maybe it does. No, I don't think it does. Papaya, similarly, I think slightly funnier looking because the papayas, I never expected them to grow exactly like this, but definitely still a strong tree resemblance.
I've never seen a papaya tree. That's weird.
I know. There's definitely a whole like long lost pop sci story that I should have written that it's just like all the weird ways that things grow.
Yeah.
Or maybe I did write that and I've forgotten.
I think Kendra wrote that.
Oh, Kendra wrote that. Oh, God. All right. Well, there you go. I'm stealing her idea after she already wrote it. What about bamboo, though?
Isn't it a grass?
Is it?
You tell me.
Is it?
It looks like a tree.
I mean, I think it's got sort of a trunk situation. This
You're
one
right.
this one even has a different color. It's sort of yellowish.
It's woody.
It's woody. You can everything that's made out of wood you can buy in a bamboo version now. It's got branches and leaves of some kind. But I think there's something about bamboo that we can all agree that says like, is it a tree? I don't really know. I think it's a little too green. I think it's a little too skinny, but it has some tree-like characteristics. But it's just maybe going a little bit too far. So I feel like, step back. I think a tree has to have a central woody trunk. I think we can agree on that. And the good news is that that's like actually sort of scientifically defined. So like the way trees get trunks, or what we think of as trees, are secondary growth of the cambia, which is like a specific layer inside of plants, and it takes semi-differentiated cells and they become more differentiated and it grows outwards in the way that we all know that trees grow. So like primary growth, that's taller essentially, like any growth that happens at the tip of a stem or a tip of a root, that's primary. Secondary, girthier. Good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we could maybe say that they're like things with woody stems / trunks that have some kind of secondary growth. And we definitely need both, because we could say like a woody stem, but then we'd have to say forsythia is a tree. I think we can all see it's not, although confusingly you can make it kind of look like a tree. But unfortunately, we also can't say that it is just like anything with secondary growth, because that's a potato also.
Oh, boy.
Both potatoes and sweet potatoes.
Don't tell a potato it can't be a tree if it lets you.
I mean, I think it's not going to make it. So potatoes are tubers, as we all know. And they're specifically stem tubers, so they are quite literally just big, fat stems, and they have all the parts of a stem as well. They have so the potato eyes are stem nodes.
Yeah.
And that's why if you leave a potato lying around, it will begin to grow new stems, because it is but a stem itself trying to grow new stems.
Wow, it's everything it needs.
It's everything it needs. Sweet potatoes, however, are root tubers, and so they have no eyes, they cannot grow. They have no eyes. They are eyeless.
Sounds like the beginning of a horror movie.
I know.
I'm scared.
Yeah.
I have no eyes, but I'm a potato.
Carrots, also similarly, just really fat tap roots, just specialized roots, and they're all just meant to like store energy for the plant, and they just got really, really extremely good at it. So trees are things with a central woody trunk that undergo secondary growth, and that I think that feels right, Secondary growth is also how you get tree rings. We literally call them tree rings. There's no other word for them. So that feels like very fundamental to treeness, if you will. And the good news is that with that definition, we've gotten rid of bamboo. Definitely not a tree.
Yeah, screw you, bamboo.
Yeah, definitely not a tree. But unfortunately, palm trees, not trees. Not trees. Palm trees have anomalous secondary growth only, which is growth of a different, just a slightly different part. And as a result, they do not have rings.
It looks so wrong.
I know, right?
Shocking to me.
I know.
I feel like there's a ring in
so that you can see there's like sort of like a core, you know, but then
Right.
it's just it looks fuzzy almost, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like a coconut.
I think it looks like you know, if you like cut open like a stuffed animal,
Oh.
but it's a tree.
I feel like I shouldn't
Have
be
you
looking
cut
at
open
this.
stuffed animals?
I think it looks wrong. It doesn't look like a tree somehow.
No.
Well, because it's not a tree.
Because it's not a tree. Exactly. It's not a tree. Palm trees, not trees. Joshua trees, certainly not
Oh, I
trees.
love them.
Certainly not trees. They are a kind of yucca plant.
Oh.
So they are not weird trees, but weird yuccas. And actually not that even that weird for yuccas because they're a pretty weird group all the way around. But that kind of brings us to like I think what may end up being the central defining treeness of trees, which is that it looks like a tree. It has what is technically called a tree-like habit or an arborescent an arborescent habit, which I think is a really beautiful term. And that it's like kind of the closest definition I think that we maybe get to with trees is that they look like trees.
That's tree-ish.
It's tree-ish, and that's what they are for us. And like really, it's because to be a tree, like trees are not so much a category as they are an evolutionary strategy. That is just like be taller. That's the goal. And if you can imagine trees evolving originally and you had all these like little shrubby things, if you could be a little taller, you could get a little bit more sunlight. And then when you think about it, actually everything that you think of as tree-ish comes from just wanting to be taller. Like if you have a woody trunk, then you can be taller and have more structure. And then once you do that, you kind of need bigger roots. And then if you have bigger roots, you can grow branches. You can get even taller still. And then if you're really big, you can grow for a long time. And then like, you know, suddenly you have an oak tree. You're just there already.
This is like when I came to terms with my height as a 6'2" woman and decided I can wear heels again. It's like I'm constantly striving to be taller, just like a tree.
Just a little bit taller.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you've gotten more sunlight, haven't you? Do you feel
I have gotten
feel
more sunlight.
stronger?
It's coursing through my veins.
Yeah, exactly. It's
Yeah.
empowering, isn't it?
It is.
Tree.
It
You have a
is.
tree-like habit, I would say.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So in a way, this also kind of brings us to crabs.
I was gonna when you said it's more of an evolutionary strategy, I was
You
like
saw
being a
you
crab.
you saw the crabs coming, yeah. So I mean, so like you know, so just we're gonna pause on the crab. So wood evolved like kind of late in plant evolution, like this well into the second half of plant evolution, and it's not like they all evolved from a singular, you know, the idea of a tree became and then everything spread out from there. Like wood evolved 38 separate times just on
What?
the Canary Islands.
What?
Yeah, like it's a very successful strategy, and so nature keeps doing it exactly like crabs. Nature just keeps making them. So I feel like surely must we all know carcinogy. Oh God, carcinization.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you have. Yeah. Okay. Which is that convergent evolution just keeps making the crab shape because it is, for some reason, very helpful. So this is not a crab. It's a squat lobster, which is also not a lobster.
What?
It's not a lobster. It's not a crab. It's just a flat crustacean.
Sarah.
I know. Hermit crabs, not crabs.
I know this one can't be a crab.
Certainly not crabs. These look way crabbier, right? There's like way more of that classic crab
Yeah.
shape. This is a porcelain crab, also not a crab,
Because it's made of porcelain.
because it's made of porcelain. And this is a king crab, which also, horrifyingly, not a crab.
No
A
way.
king crab is not a true crab. Isn't that upsetting?
What are they?
They're a fake crab. Like true crabs are of the infraorder Brachyura, and that is the scientific definition of a true crab. You must be in that family, and all of these other crabs are imposters.
Imposters.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to share in the evolutionary strategy of crabness. I also think it's interesting because crabs, like we genuinely don't understand why this is helpful.
Yeah. Like, what is it?
What is
Well,
it?
I saw someone recently be like, one day will humans evolve into crab shape? And someone was like, don't you think we already have?
Oh.
And they were like, and I was like, oh my God, we are, in the grand scheme of things, pretty crab-like.
Yeah, we do have larger front
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
appendages.
Oh my God.
Think about it. Yeah. All we need is Michelle.
Of the primates, we're among the crabbiest.
That's true. But yeah, something about the crab shape is really helpful, and we still haven't figured out what it is, but nature keeps making them. And like trees are the same, except that we know exactly what makes them beneficial. They get big and strong and tall, like Jess, and they get more sunlight. And I feel like there's actually something that, like, in a weird way, I started out a little bit angry, if I'm being honest, that trees weren't a real thing. I just thought, like, this cannot be yet another thing, like that corn fact that I did several live shows ago, where just, like, nothing means anything anymore in botany. But I actually think there's something kind of beautiful that, like, it can look like a crab and not be a crab, but if it looks like a tree, it's a tree. It's a tree. That's it.
Be anything
great.
you want to be.
Exactly. As long as you look like a tree, you can be a tree. You can be
love
anything
that.
you want.
I'm inspired.
The end.
I, like many others, this summer saw Oppenheimer and Barbie. And the movie was excellent, really, truly a great film. But one of the scenes that really stuck out to me was this one right here. And if you haven't seen it, there are just truly no spoilers. Like, okay, fine, I'm spoiling it with this image, but it's all good. It happened in history.
Yeah,
So,
the world history has spoiled
we know.
the movie Oppenheimer.
You know. This was a scene during the Trinity test where theoretical physicist Edward Teller covers himself in sunscreen. I'm holding this still. Covers himself in sunscreen to protect himself from the dangerous effects of the bomb's flash. Cool. Okay. So this begs a lot of questions for me. First, did we actually have sunscreen in 1945? And second, would it really have protected him from the bomb's flash? Okay. Massive disclaimer here. If you all saw Oppenheimer and this wasn't your favorite scene, that's normal and okay. Really, as expected. The thing with me is that I am a sunscreen enthusiast. So my mother is a chemical engineer and cosmetic chemist, and for most of my childhood made sunscreen for a living, for Banana Boat sunscreen. So all of the sunscreen that you used if you used Banana Boat in the late 90s and 2000s was my mom's and others' formulas. So I just grew up with sunscreen. Okay, there was sunscreen in my basement, boxes of it. She would come home, she had a new formula, we would try it out. Like, I loved sunscreen. It was awesome. I knew so much about it. I knew what SPF was when I was 10. Okay, no one else knows that. So when this scene came up, I was like, what? I did not think they had sunscreen in 1945. This makes no sense. So I must investigate. All right. The first thing I did was make sure that this fact was correct, because it is indeed a movie, and you take liberties with movies, okay? So I found two good references. Now, the first was according to a report from I'm left-handed, from the U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Scientific and Technical Information that detailed the goings-on on the day of the Trinity test. The report says, quote, meanwhile, Edward Teller was making everyone nervous by applying liberal amounts of sunscreen in the pre-dawn darkness and offering to pass it around.
That would be me.
Same. I mean, same. And then Edward Teller actually passed away on September 9th, 2003, at the age of 95. And in his obituary a few days later in the Washington Post, it states, wearing welder's goggles with his face and hands smeared with suntan lotion as protection against radiation, Dr. Teller was one of the small group of noted physicists on hand at Alamogordo in New Mexico desert to witness the world's first atomic explosions. So, U.S. government and Washington Post, I feel good that sunscreen was on hand that day. So now in my quest to understand what the sunscreen was, it sent me down a lovely rabbit hole of bizarre facts about the history of sunscreen that I didn't know, and I bet you my mother did not know either. So please enjoy. All right. We'll leave it. Now, one final disclaimer. I did try to include as much as I could, but some information was either boring, not interesting, or there's just like too much. Like there's a lot out there on sunscreen, you guys. I really hope that you become sunscreen enthusiasts after this. So there's stuff I left out. I know there's other things about sunscreen. So we're starting way, way back. It is a fact that humans did not invent sunscreen. Animals have evolved various ways to protect themselves from the sun. Here are a few of my favorites. Obviously, the fur coats of animals can serve as protection against sunburn. Hippos secrete a reddish, oily fluid. Okay, reddish, oily fluid comes back. So just remember it, that. Sometimes called, quote, blood sweat from special glands in their skin.
Blood sweat.
And yes. And it mainly functions as antibiotic and moisturizer, but some researchers think it has some sunburn protection factors in it. Elephants, as seen here, cuties, actively seek out shelter and shade on a regular basis, but an even more common coping mechanism is coating themselves with mud. The mud aids in skincare, but researchers have found that also provides some sun protection. But I will give it to humans that we were incredibly creative in our hunt for protection from the sun. So here we are today, so many types of sunscreen, and still inventing every day. Still have a long way to go. The sun. So
That is what it looks like.
It is exactly what it looks like, and it smiles. So at some point in human history, humans everywhere around the world were like, oh no, I love the sun, but it is bad. It gives me a burn. What do I do? So there's evidence that ancient Egyptians used rice bran, jasmine, lupine to block the tanning effects of the sun on their skin. Greeks used olive oil, not very successfully. And the Viking used a combination of charcoal, burnt almonds, lead, and oxidized copper and ash as an eyeliner to protect their eyes from the sun.
The lead does a great job shielding you from the sun.
It does a lot of stuff. So very creative. Okay, so now I told you we're going to jump around a bit. We are going to flash forward to 1938. I went a little crazy. I just discovered that I could do that, and I was like, ooh, I'm gonna do it a lot. Okay, so here we are. And as the story goes, it is 1938, and a Swiss chemist named Franz Grieter goes climbing and attempts to summit Mount Pisboon. Now, I couldn't find a good picture of Franz that I was allowed to use, so I went with Mount Pisboon. There it is.
Oh, wow.
What a beaut.
Yeah.
And so he attempts to summit this mountain, and it's in the Alps, in case you're wondering, in Switzerland, the border of Switzerland and Austria. And he climbs up, and it takes way longer than him and his comrades expected, and I'm sure you can guess, he gets a sunburn. And he is so angry about it that he's like, for the rest of my career, I am going to create sunscreen. Some way to protect myself from the sun. These are good questions. However, have you ever had a sunburn? I mean, mistakes are made a lot.
I guess I'm just surprised that he got, so late in his life. and then was like, this is such a traumatic event that I will change the course of my life.
Maybe it was just a really bad sunburn.
I've had some, yeah, but then they go away, and you're like, okay, you know what? I'm not gonna create sunscreen. It's just a bad burn, like a bad haircut. I feel better now. But
Yes,
he went for it. So this incident sends him down a decades-long quest, which culminates in him developing and commercializing the first modern sunscreen called Glacier Cream. He names his brand Pisbuin in honor of the mountain that burned him.
Catchy.
He is also credited for creating the sun protection factor ratings, and he labeled his as an SPF rating of 2.
Oh.
Awesome.
He's honest, though.
Good job. So, yeah. All right. So, jumping forward again. Back. Okay. So, this was a decade after he climbed mountain, got burned. He creates the sunscreen. Now, we're going to go back a little bit in time, and we're going to enter the U.S. Army. That is not the U.S. Army. Just stay with me. The year is 1942. Morale is not excellent. We are in the middle of World War II, and the Army Air Force, which I didn't know what the Army Air Force was until last night. I knew what the Army was. I knew what the Air Force was. It's a component of the Army that flies, obviously. So the more you know. They approached the American Medical Association Council of Pharmacy and Chemistry for a top secret experiment. Now, just so you know, I'm not making this up, I decided to use a quote from a 2001 article in the Journal of Photochemistry and Photobiology, B:biology. That is what it's called. Quote, one of the most unusual episodes in the history of sunscreen development occurred in 1942. The Army Air Force Material Center, represented by Colonel Otis Benson, approached the American Medical Association Council of Pharmacy and Chemistry with the request to advise about the most effective protective substance for the prophylaxis of sunburn. The idea was to protect men marooned on life rafts or in the desert following aircraft crashes. The results of any studies were to be kept as, quote, top secret. Lots to unpack here. First, I don't know what you would be thinking if you were marooned on a life raft or stuck in the middle of the ocean somewhere, but even I, a sunscreen devotee, would absolutely not be thinking about whether I would get burned that day. I would think about 1, water, 2, food, 3, shelter. But the Army was very insistent that if the event this happened, that their soldiers would not get sunburned. Someone up top there had one too many bad burns.
Yeah.
So they had 3 key necessary qualities. 1 was waterproof, 2 was inexpensive, and 3 was free of toxicity. Great. Excellent. Those are good choices, especially the 3rd one. So it seems like for the next 2 years, scientists there that were given the download on the top secret experiment were experimenting with various products. And then by 1944, they had a breakthrough. Benjamin Green, an airman and pharmacist, comes up with the idea to use a substance called red vet pet, which is red veterinary petrolatum.
Oh.
Yeah, petrolatum just being Vaseline. Vaseline's just the name brand for 100% petrolatum. I don't know if you've ever used Vaseline, like on your face at night, as TikTok beauty videos tell you to do. But it's intense. I wouldn't really call it comfortable, and it kind of just sits there, and it's annoying. So basically, everyone agrees with me back then. They are like, what is this gross product that you expect me to use? But it does meet all the requirements. So it's waterproof, inexpensive, and it is free of toxicity. In fact, petrolatum is one of the safest products you can put on your face. Essentially what it does is it creates a very physical barrier between your skin and the elements. Again, SPF did not exist at that time, but researchers have also given red vet pet and petrolatum an SPF rating of about 1 to 2.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, not great.
No.
Truly just barely gets the job done. So going back to Oppenheimer, this was really the main product at the time that was labeled as sunscreen. And so that doesn't look red, though. It honestly doesn't. It looks pretty white. So I was unconvinced that that is red vet pet on him. And I really couldn't find anything else at the time that is considered sunscreen in the 1940s. The only other product that was theoretically available was titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. But those really weren't formulated into a sunscreen until decades later. They were actually first formulated into diaper creams for babies who had diaper rashes first. Before they were sunscreens. So unless this theoretical physicist knew things that we didn't know and was like, I've got a stash of titanium oxide, do you want some? I know it works well. I'm just unconvinced that this was red vet pet. But, maybe they took some liberties. Okay, so now I'm going to jump forward one more time. Yay, sun bad. There's the mountain again. All right, and the sun is back. Now, jumping back one more time to the 1920s. So now just thinking about sunscreen broadly, we created Red Vet Pet, and it has an SPF of 2. The other guy's weird mountain product, also SPF of 2. No one's really doing an excellent job of protecting themselves from the sun. And meanwhile, mixed in with all of this, all of a sudden, people everywhere are like, tanning is cool. And that takes us to the 1920s, and Coco Chanel, super popular person, very cool and trendy at the time. And apparently, as the story goes, she goes on vacation and doesn't wear proper protection, and she, instead of getting a sunburn, she gets a suntan. But even so, she gets pictures taken, and everyone's like, oh, your skin is very tan. And she's like, I meant to do this. I wanted it like this. Tanning is cool. The sun is awesome.
Oh.
I had fun with this last night. And that really started, at least in America and Europe, this idea that tanning is cool and trendy and fun, and it's something that dermatologists and sunscreen manufacturers have had to work against ever since. Indeed, pharmacist and Vaseline enthusiast Benjamin Green, going back to his Red Vet Pet, he takes that product and he transforms it into a more pleasing, consumer-friendly version of the product by adding cocoa butter and coconut oil, a combination that eventually becomes Copper Tone Suntan Lotion. No SPF in there, just 0. Negative. So now to very quickly sum up between the 1940s and now, we have this almost tug of war between suntan lotion and Coco Chanel and sunscreen and sun protection and sun care. And obviously sunscreens have gotten a lot better and more diverse, and I have a slide of sunscreen spray, cool, waterproof, and suntanicals, 1990s, banana boat, I think, 2000s. And obviously we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go to make them palatable, cheaper, and more friendly to all skin types. But at least we don't have Vaseline as sunscreen. The end.
Jess, are you ready?
I was born ready.
To talk about cheese magic? Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, go to rachelfeldman.com.
It's
For more merch.
www.rachelfeldman.com, newsletters, merch, and more. Also, just like all the weirdest thing stuff is there too. So
Yeah. Cheese magic. Okay. So, when it comes to telling fortunes, there's a lot of ways you could do it. Tarot cards, tea leaves, palms, stars. But what about cheese? It's more likely than you think. In fact, this goes back hundreds of years. The art of using cheese to tell fortunes is actually called tyromancy. So this word is Greek, or its roots are in Greek. So turos means cheese, mantella means divination, and divination is like, how you seek knowledge using supernatural means, essentially. So, cheese divination is tyromancy. So this is something that appears in books all the way back to the 2nd century. There was this guy named Artemidorus of Daldis. What a name. Professional fortune teller, and he wrote about it in relation to his work on dream interpretation. He was like a dream interpreter. But he didn't like cheese. He did not like tyromancy. He thought it was not real fortune telling.
what?
I know. So he said, he specifically hated cheesecake, which I think is really funny. He said it signified trickery and ambushes. And this is, which I don't know.
Because he didn't want a cake to secretly be cheese.
Probably.
All right. I don't think it's that much of a secret, though.
I don't think so. It's called cheesecake. And he was quoted as saying, quote, "The truth is spoken by sacrificers and bird diviners and astrologers and observers of wonders and dream diviners and liver examiners alone." So all of those those are the only real fortune tellers, but not tyromancers. So he was pretty bitter, pretty salty about this whole thing, kind of like feta cheese. Anyway, before we dive into the specifics of tyromancy, let's set the stage a little bit. We'll talk about how cheese has kind of had this air of magic and that sort of thing for many hundreds of years. So back in ancient Greece and Rome, people offered cheese to deities, and it was said that there was this god of shepherds and beekeepers, same dude. His name was Aristaeus, and he learned to make cheese from nymphs, and then he taught the humans how to make cheese. That was their story of cheese. And if you've read the Odyssey, or the wonderful novel Circe by Madeline Miller, which it's such a good book. If you haven't read it, they know. That's about the witch Circe in the story of Odysseus. And she basically turned Odysseus' squad into animals using a magic potion disguised as a fancy drink. And that drink had, if I can find my place, yes, which had barley meal, honey, wine, and of course, cheese. So magic cheese potion turned them into animals. And then basically cheese magic continued to be tied to witches and witchcraft for a while. So in the 12th century, people thought Italian innkeepers were feeding customers cheese to turn them into donkeys. Later on in the 17th century, during the Renaissance, there was this one dairymaid named Isabel Maine, which I'm watching a lot of Suits lately, and that just sounds like a lawyer name. I don't know. But basically, Isabel had this batch of milk from her cow that wouldn't turn into cheese, so she thought she was cursed. So she had, she had this magician named Margaret Stothard, and she came to look at the cow and said it had been cursed. And then she did a spell so that it would make cheese again. All of this witchy stuff is kind of all happening behind the scenes with cheese. But did you know that in addition to being witchy, cheese can also be sexy?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you did, of course. So this might be my favorite cheese fact of the night. There was this guy in the 13th century named Odo of Cheriton, and he was a moralist and a theologian. And he did not like grilled cheese because he said it was akin to adultery. Here's the quote that he said. Cheese is toasted and placed in a trap. When the rat smells it, it enters the trap, seizes the cheese, and is caught by the trap. So it is with all sin. Cheese is toasted when a woman is dressed up and adorned, so that she entices and catches the foolish rats. Take a woman in adultery, and the devil will catch you. I mean, have you had grilled cheese?
Yeah.
I get it.
There are worse things to be compared to.
I agree.
Sensually.
Yeah. Also, I have this nice, sexy grilled cheese. I was talking about needing a sexy picture of grilled cheese. And this is my friend John. He streams food content on Twitch, and this is his sexy grilled cheese.
It's very nice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You can also do some more romantic magic with cheese. You can people used to do this, write the name of a person you want to date, like multiple people, on different pieces of cheese. You leave them out overnight or for however long it takes to one to get moldy. The one that molds first is the one you got to go for. You could also do, if you're really crunched for time, you could do the same thing, write the names on the cheese, and then put them in a cage with a hungry rat. And whatever cheese gets eaten first is the one you should go for, which I think is fun because it's like when you have your cat decide who's going to win the Super Bowl. That's what it reminds me of. But anyway, so I have so many cheese facts. In the 14th century, you can bite off a piece of bread and cheese, toss it over the shoulder. Good luck for fertility. That's nice. And also, it can help in other ways with fertility. Like if a witch curses your guy's junk and it's not, things aren't happening for you, you can cure this by taking a block of cheese, boring like a little hole all the way through. And then you got to feed him the little cheese that came out of the hole, and then he's cured. It could have gone another way, I will admit. It could have gone another way. But it didn't go that way. So, finally, cheese can be used, or has been used in the past, as a practical tool. So medieval folks used it to decide who committed a crime, kind of like the witch hunt stuff, like floating or sinking. So you'd sit down your criminals, put a spell on the cheese. Here's the cheese. There's the cheese spell. May his mouth be cursed and full of bitterness, under his tongue pain and labor. If he is guilty, he will eat in the name of the devil. If he's not guilty, he will eat in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ. Whatever that means.
But he eats either way?
Right. So the thing is,
cheese either way.
Both the criminals then eat the cheese, but one of them, if they can't chew and swallow the cheese, that they're guilty.
It's an eating contest?
Yeah.
To decide who dies?
I can't say I understand it.
I've been preparing for this my whole life.
Yeah, that's what I said too. I was like, is this just a way to punish people who don't like cheese?
Yes.
I guess so. And then, I also learned about cheese fairies. If you wanted a good harvest, you would toss cheese into the cheese well to give to the cheese fairies in Scotland. That hole is a former cheese well. And now there's like a stone there, as you can see on the right. And people give coins to it now for the fairies. But they used to give it cheese.
Wait, sorry. What's a cheese well?
A cheese well. It's a hole in the ground where you toss the cheese.
And then the fairies go get it.
Yeah, Claire gets
Those
it.
fairies are probably
Okay. You threw it out there like a cheese well, obviously.
A cheese well.
Yeah.
I know,
okay.
the fairies probably
All right.
are very cheese deprived now.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. I really should have known. Okay, that's for later. Okay. So basically, all this cheese magic paved the way for a more structured, modern version of tyromancy, which today is very similar to how you'd read tarot cards and poems and tea leaves and stuff. So basically, how that works today is you bring your own cheese to your tyromancer. It's BYOC. They use that piece of cheese to answer questions or foretell something. Basically, like you can ask about your career, a romantic situation, what might happen in the future, all of that kind of stuff. And then tyromancers use like the size or number of holes in a Swiss cheese, or like the veining in a blue cheese, or like you can see symbols in the veining in blue cheese. Any kind of like natural cheese that is not uniform in nature, like a Kraft single, no go for tyromancy. And so yeah, and like you see symbols like a triangle might mean change, or like A heart could mean love, all of these things, very similar to tea leaf reading. And actually, I've learned that you can do, tea leaves, you dump out your tea leaves and then you look for the symbols. You can do the same thing with a crumbly cheese in a cup, and you dump it out and then you look for the patterns.
Great.
Also, I know many of you were thinking, if you listen to the show, wow, Jess hasn't brought up video games once yet.
I was thinking that.
Behold, The Witcher 3. I've never played the Witcher games, and people get very mad at me about that. And see, I'm seeing one right now. And I don't know, I think it was just I missed it, and then I feel like it's kind of, I'm playing Baldur's Gate 3 now, so I feel like that's scratching the same itch. Anyway, there's tyromancy quests in The Witcher, and they talk about doing tyromancy using fondue. Also, this is a screenshot from the game where there's statues holding cheese.
Incredibly unserious.
Yep. So this is
Wait, how do you do it with fondue? It's a uniform.
Oh, just wait. Just wait.
It's like craft singles, just a lot of them.
Well, it involves a candle. The best divination is done using the ancient method of fondue. One must simply melt 2 kinds of cheese, preferably Emmental or Gruyere, in white wine or in a pinch of dry apple cider. Then one must use a long stick to immerse a morsel of bread in the resultant thick soupy mixture, all the while keeping in mind the question, what shall my child be like when he or she, as the case may be, grows? Then bring the cheese-covered morsel of bread up to a candle so that it casts a shadow on the wall. The shape will provide a sure and easily understood answer to your query.
Sure and easily understood?
Hey, maybe to a cheese fortune teller, I don't know. So that's another way to do it. I don't know what this was for. I'll let it ride. Okay. Oh, I know where I'm going with this. So we've heard all about cheese divination. You might be wondering, why would people think cheese is magic?
I'm not wondering that.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
'Cause we've all had cheese. We understand collectively that it is magically delicious. But actually, 12th century mystic Hildegard von Bingen
Oh my gosh, my
frequently
God.
comes up all the time on this show. Talked about cheese as magic and compared the act of cheese making to the miracle of life, essentially because it seemed like something was coming from nothing. Like cheese curds come from this liquid milk, something solid's coming up from something liquid. It's all very weird. And then also the idea that you give milk to babies become adults. It's seems this very mystical sort of thing, which now as I say this, it's kind of a stretch. But back then they were this is some shit. And yeah, well, we're talking about in theory, the scientific roots behind cheese magic, which, may or may not be there. But I wanted to investigate the roots of cheese giving people weird dreams and nightmares. Because that's something I feel we talk about all the time, and I don't know if that's real. Because sometimes I feel that happens to me, but is that just the culture? I don't know. So it turns out it might be. So people have tried to study this, but it's hard because we just know so little about dreams in general. It's very hard to study dreams because they're, it's a lot of surveys, and you can't do a lot of data and testing and all that stuff. But 2 scientists named Tor Nielsen and Russell Powell did a study at the Dream and Nightmare Laboratory at the Sacre-Cœur Hospital in Montreal. They had about 400 college kids answer some questions about their diet and their dreams. And while only about 12% of people said their dreams were affected by food, of that 12%, 44 said that dairy gave them disturbing dreams. And 40% said they were bizarre dreams, so disturbing or bizarre dreams. And when it came to the kind of dairy, it was cheese. So, of course, this study didn't look at any kind of mechanism. It's all self-reported data, that sort of stuff. But these people could have just been influenced by culture. Dreams are very suggestible for a lot of people. But maybe for people who are lactose intolerant, maybe eating cheese before bed can interrupt your sleep patterns. That's possible. Or maybe the particular carb protein fat ratio is the perfect storm to help you enter a deep REM sleep. Who's to say? We just don't have the info, but there is definitely a cultural pattern of cheese giving people dreams. So, well, who knows? To wrap it all up, we've talked about cheese magic, where it came from, why people did it, where it's been. But what about today? today, can there be cheese magic, modern cheese magic? And the answer is yes. And I found a woman who does it. Her name is Jen. And she's excellent. And I talked to her. Give it up for Jen. She is a fellow Chicagoan, and she's a journalist, and she writes about travel and food, and she also does tyromancy. She'll go to like restaurants and do like a wine pairing with like a little tyromancy and talk about the history of it and read your fortune. And yeah, she'll also do group sessions, individual sessions. She's great. And if you book with her, remember to BYOC. And that's what I have to say about cheese magic.
Incredible. So that brings us to the end of our facts. And unfortunately, because the wonderful people at Caveat have to turn over the space for their 9 o'clock show, that is also the end of our time here. But it has been so lovely getting to, I'm not going to say see all your beautiful faces because a lot of you just kind of look like shapes to me, but I love that you're there anyway.
Wait, Rachel, do we not vote on facts anymore?
Yeah, so
is it just like
we've abolished
all
this
happy
policy
now? Everyone.
Yeah, recently I decided that I didn't like there being a winner, mostly because we just kept tying, and I was like, everybody's so good.
Oh, okay.
But everybody is so good. So I would love for everybody to give it up for all of our facts, but particularly starting with Sara Chodash's fact. No treat. And can we get some love for Claire Maldarelli's Sunscreen expose? And the amazing Jess Bodie's Cheese Magic. Thank you all so much. I really hope you're going to be able to.
Do your fact.
I can't. Oh, clap for me. Thank you. This is literally the only reason why I wanted to do this show. But seriously, thank you guys so much for coming out. We definitely hope to do this again soon. Thanks for listening to Weirdest Thing. Tell all your friends. Keep listening. Keep sharing. Buy my weird merchandise if you want. I literally make like pennies on the dollar for it. It's truly for the graphic design is my passion. It's the love of the game. And yeah, thank you to Caveat for hosting us. It's been a wonderful evening as always. And we hope to be back here real soon. So everybody have a great night. Remember to tip your bartender and be nice to the Caveat folks while we're clearing out. We will definitely try to say hello, but keep in mind that they do have another show coming in. Cool. That's it. We're done.